Stephen, how did this come about? How did you write? Why did you write it? How did you write it? Where did it come from?
Well, it came out of the Culver City group. Previous to this one, I had been writing, most of the scripts I had written were mostly for men. But the Culver City group, we have mostly women. So I decided I needed to write something that included more female parts. And there were a couple of actresses. One was actually Elizabeth, who is one of our more senior actresses, and I wanted to write a part for her. And it was just the ideal of her age group and thinking about that and what would, you know, what I needed to draw a family together. And why I thought about her committing suicide, I'm not sure. I figured it would have some emotional content and some people would be able to connect to it. And I also think it came out of, there was a story recently or right before I wrote this about a woman from California who had moved to Oregon because they had legalized assisted suicide. And it was just this ideal that her and her family had made this decision that they were going to move there because she didn't want to go through the cancer treatment anymore. And she was done. And they just moved their entire family to Oregon so that she could decide her life the way she wanted it to be decided. And it was just this ideal that her and her family.
Somebody actually watching the Facebook back on Facebook, because we're getting a bit of feedback sound here. Hello, Marcia. Glad you do.
Hi. Yeah, I've been having major troubles. Let me see if I can.
Did you just turn off the Facebook?
I know.
Anyway, so what I've noticed about you, Stephen, so the Culver City group is a play reading group, which we've been doing for 6 years. And play reading and performance. So we do rehearse and block, and so doing that. The thing I noticed about you was that you've been so surprised so many times by your plays having an emotional, what's the word? Thud. No, having such an emotional, such a touching, heartbreaking, heart-rending, heart-affirming effect, and this is one that has done the same. And I always see you being surprised when it happens. Why is that? Do you don't know?
I'm surprised. I'm surprised when people laugh at some of my scripts because I don't realize they're that funny. And I remember when we did this one at the Culver City group, and Marcia played the daughter. And she started crying while she was performing. And then I realized I was crying. And I'm going, wait a minute, I wrote this. Why am I crying? You know, I know the story. Why am I crying about it? But it was because of the performance that came out of that it just, it's moving each time I watch it. So I'm surprised. Yes, I am always surprised that I can elicit either a response of laughter or a response of someone getting that emotional. I'm always surprised.
Marcia, of course, is the supremo of emotional. Again, over the weekend, there was this amazing scene that you were performing in 1963, the play that we were doing, and I mean, I was in tears and I was cracked up watching it, and it was just absolutely extraordinary. I mean, well done on being able to do that. And
Thank you.
And you know, being able to twist people around your little finger. But I also, Stephen, the booth, which is another one that we've recorded like this, and will come up soon. When we did it in Culver City, you were playing the main part, and I was trying to I think I was trying to persuade you during the rehearsal that yes, it was very touching at the end, and you didn't get that until you actually played it for the audience, and everybody just teared up, and I think you teared up, and
Yeah.
the whole. It's an interesting.
I remember doing that part, and afterwards I had this really strong feeling in my chest that I had experienced something, and that was also surprising. That just came out of nowhere.
Well, it
That
came
was definitely a surprise.
came out of your writing and your performance, as a matter of fact. So it's all kind of a loop, isn't it, in many ways? Anyway, so this play, so how did you enjoy, Ruth, being in this play?
Well, I love the experience because it is a very controversial topic. And if you want to have good drama, it's nice to have a dose of controversy. And especially something like this, you know, the right to die on your own terms. It's such a heated debate in this country, you know, and it, in many respects, you know, religiously, politically, it's a moral debate. And then there is the emotional aspect, you know, of seeing Monica and Marcia together as mother and daughter, and, you know, how the mother loved her life, but it was time to go. And the daughter is so attached and doesn't want to leave, you know, but the mother being somewhat evolved, recognizing that, you know, just when you cross over, it's not the end of life. It's just, you know, life without a body, which is my personal belief anyway, to be quite truthful. So I really was very touched by this piece. I loved playing the funny sister, you know, the sassy sister. It was a fun role for me.
The drinking sister.
The drinking sister. When all else fails, just drink. You know, throw darts, make underhanded comments. I mean, so there was that kind of like dark comedy edge to it as well. And Stephen, as you know, I had the privilege in being in one of your plays before when I was with Joey on stage, and that was kind of dark and comedic at the same time, you know, having the two dead husbands. And so anyway, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to my fellow actors. And I thought it was a lovely piece.
Excellent. And David.
Thanks all of you for being willing to participate in this. Thanks a lot.
Of course, Stephen, I love your work. You know that.
I'll have to keep writing then.
Yes, please do.
I was going to ask David, I always think of your character in this play as being kind of the outsider. And there's all of this kind of action going on, and you're sort of off to the side. And I was wondering how you felt about your character, if you felt it needed more from the script.
I thought it was pretty good, just in the sense that it's pretty reflective of how I think some men are in today's world, especially, you know, given the fact that a lot of us are on our phones. So it was a unique character in the sense of, well, this is the character description, but then again, it's like, I mean, I'm more used to doing something that's a little bit more interactive, but, you know, art reflects life, and I do think there's a lot of that does exist in that way. So it is what it is, you know. It was a fun opportunity. You know, I pretty much know everybody here. I mean, Marcia, I haven't met Marcia officially, but obviously she's a very talented actress. I know Ruth, I know Monica, I've met Stephen. And I mean, overall, this was a really good opportunity, I think, for each of us. I think for a lot of us, it was very therapeutic in the sense that we get to still connect to this art form in the middle of this pandemic. And, you know, I mean, at least there was that outlet that was available for us during these times. And I think a lot of us are very appreciative and grateful for that. And it was fun. I'm very grateful. You know, I really am thankful for the opportunity to do this. So thank you guys.
Well, let me ask you this, because Ruth brought up this question about your character.
Mm-hmm.
What do you, how would you describe your character?
He's a guy that I actually, to some extent, I actually do think he is a good guy, because he's almost to the point where he's a good guy where he's just emotionally closed off. He actually reminds me a lot of my dad, because my dad is a good guy, but when it comes to those moments that you need somebody there to listen to you, to empathize with you, to comfort you, it's not so much that I think that some people like my character or like my father are just bad people. They just don't have that awareness to be a little bit more. So, I mean, obviously, you hear in the dialogue, he's like, well, I could do that, but then we wouldn't have a roof over our head. So the intention is obviously good to keep everybody afloat, but he's just, you know, he's just closed off, you know, and he's just clueless. He's just in one direction and he's not there. And he's just the type of character where, you know, Marsha's gonna find some other guy, you know, in the next sequel, you know.
Yeah, you're old hat. You're out of here.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is Ruth asked me, because I guess the perception of your character is this guy's, he's a jerk, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
And so Ruth asked me, she said, so was there somebody in your life that you based this character on? And I said, well, I based it on myself. But the way that I see this character is that he's surrounded by 3 people that he's not related to, and they're female. And that my life growing up, I was the only boy with 3 sisters and a father that wasn't very attentive. So most of my time was spent with my 3 sisters and my mother. And one of the things that they loved to do was go shopping. So there I am, this little boy standing in the women's dressing room, watching them pick out bras and underwear. And I became that person who just learned not to be there. And everything else, all the discussions, everything went around me. And I was just there. Well, as your character, you're there to drive your wife to wherever she needs to go, and you're there to help provide for the finances. But when they get together, you're not really supposed to be there, and you've learned to adjust to that, and you've learned to kind of be off to the side. And that's what I, felt about your character, but not sure if that comes through or not, but that's the way I felt about it.
I thought it came through very well, by the way. I think David did a fantastic job on it.
Yes,
I mean,
he
it
did.
felt real.
And I want to also mention David. I love the Grizzly Adams look.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is
Remember what I told you, David?
this is the pandemic grizzly beard.
Right, it's the COVID beard.
The pandemic look.
David, you can become a rabbi as a side gig.
Yeah, I totally could. It's funny because I have it like down, but I was experimenting with it like a few days ago, and I was just like brushing it up this way, and it literally like it goes out like 3 inches this way.
I love it.
And I definitely could be a rabbi for sure. I just got to get a yarmulke, and then I'll post it on Facebook.
Or-
and I'll tag you guys.
Or a yoga instructor.
Yeah,
That's another.
yeah, I could do that too, definitely.
I just wanted to add one quick thing, Henry. With David's character, as the sassy aunt, I had fun playing off of him, like I was muttering under my breath and making little jabs at him, you know, underneath, because my character doesn't have a lot of respect for him. And, you know, again, not that he's a bad guy, but my character thinks he's kind of useless, that he's taking up space. So I thank you for the permission to make little sidebar remarks.
And my character loved him.
And-
Couldn't
and-
have a better son-in-law.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting to watch it a couple of times too, because what you do, Ruth, sometimes I think gets lost, because in this type of format, you're paying attention to who's talking, and you're kind of up there at the top sometimes, and it's sort of like we don't get to see how you're actually reacting to him. And there's some really good shots of you making those types of reactions, but unfortunately, our attention is on whoever's talking at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are some really good shots of you.
Well, there's a solution. Maybe we can take this to the stage when this madness is over.
Well, I asked Stacy if she would watch it, because I said we were thinking of maybe submitting it for the Taboo series.
That would be.
Depending on how she reacts to that, but then I was also thinking, because of they're doing the AWS showcase. I asked Stacy. Was that another? Oh, so I was thinking of maybe submitting it for the showcase as a possibility.
That would be spectacular.
Definitely, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So Marcia, you do have more to say about the play, because you haven't weighed in yet.
Well, I've been listening to everybody else, and I have to say, Stephen, I know when we first did this in group, and you mentioned that you were surprised at how emotional it was for me, and then realizing that you were crying and that other people were, and then how the character of Michael, you saw Michael as really being you, and there's definitely a connection between those, because Michael, to me, well, I've kind of lived with somebody like this, who just is sort of in their own little world, not really paying much attention. I didn't think about Michael as being the way you said, Stephen. I kind of got from him that just cold, detached, distant, just not really interested in what's going on, and just like, oh yeah, no, yeah, your mom, yeah, she asked her something, whatever she wants, cool, I'm doing it, you know. And it's just being around somebody like that for so long. At one point I was just like, I almost, you know, said a swear word you're not supposed to swear and be able to put it on to something like this. I don't know how those kinds of words come out in the wash for this kind of presentation. So, but that was the frustration that I was getting on that level from him, that he was just so detached all the time. And here's this moment where we should all be coming together, and there he is, just, you know, yeah, whatever, and on the phone. And it is indicative of what's going on today. There's so many times before all this happened, and I was actually out eating lunch in a restaurant.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Where? Where?
When the world was open. It was amazing. And not only were about 90% of the people at other tables around me, they were all sitting together, groups of people, but most of them were on their phones. I had like 4 or 5 other people with me, and they were on their phones. And I just was looking around. I just in the middle, I just went, what the fuck? You know,
Bravo.
and everybody turned looking at me, and I said, I'm a person sitting here. I'm the only one not with a phone. Should I pick mine up, or should you guys put yours down?
Yeah,
Good for
I
you.
hate that.
So,
Yeah, it's so
Yeah, it's
disrespectful.
Yeah, it's bad.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny
but-
because I went out with this woman recently, and it's funny because usually you hear it the reverse where it's like the men that are neglected, but this girl was just the type of girl that I'd like. I could write a novel about this, but to the point where I would get intimate with her and she would still have to have the television on to watch Sports Center. And it was like one of those things where like,
Oh God.
you gotta be shitting me. And it was funny because I was like, okay, now I know how that feels like. It is what it is. So.
And it's such a guy thing to do, to have to watch sports. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you thought she was hurraying for you, didn't you?
Well, I have to say something about Michael. I felt there was a real vulnerability to him. I felt there was a sweetness. And I don't know if it's because Lizzie had a little sweet something in her heart for him. Maybe she understood him. I don't know. But I felt that he was, I didn't see him being distant or isolated. I felt that he just was a guy, and that he meant well, you know, and that he was willing to do anything for me. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be at your funeral, even though he didn't know really what he was saying. And I felt sorry for him, you know, especially when he's being berated by all these women, and yet he still hung in there and he went with the flow. So I thought his character was very complex.
Well, you were dying. You weren't paying much attention. It's okay.
But I think that's one of the great directings pieces that Henry did, because he was able to take that character and say, well, he's going to react to you differently than he's going to react to Marcia, because they have this history and this is how they talk to each other. This is what both of them have created, but he's going to talk to you differently. And I'm glad that, you know, Henry kind of focused on that and wanted that to happen, because for me, again, based on married people that I have known growing up, that's the relationship they have. That's the relationship. See, my wife's here. That's the relationship I have with my wife. We have these arguments and we have these buttons that we can push. And we know they're there. And then the other times everything's fine, but there are times where it's like we're gonna be batting heads together.
Yeah.
And that's how that worked. And I'm glad that Henry saw that was different from how his character interacted with his mother-in-law.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And you know, it's you know, as for the whole, I mean, I realized, you know, you and I, Stephen, never really, you know, talked about our past or anything like that. And, but I lost my mom at a very young age. And so that brings up a lot of stuff for me, even just thinking about it. So it was not hard for me to connect. In fact, it was, yeah, it took some work to just kind of create a little bit of distance. I remember when we did it in group, and Elizabeth played my mom, and it nearly just killed me to just to see that. But I do understand that there is that debate, as you were talking about earlier, about dying on your own terms. And it is a real question. And I have a very good friend for whom it's a looming question for her now and in the future, you know, whenever that future happens. And it's one thing to say, yes, I agree with that. And you can think it in your head, you can even feel it in your heart. But then when you're confronted with it, when it's someone that you love and they're in front of you and they're telling you this, that's a very different thing.
Sure.
Yeah. And the fact that she does this, the mother does this, she makes the choice by herself, which, yes, I agree with, but she doesn't give them any chance to weigh in on it.
She doesn't want them to stop them.
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't want to be stopped. This is her choice, and she's made all of the arrangements, and this is how it is. And she doesn't want to go into a big thing, and she knows that I'm going to get upset. She knows how we're all going to react because we're all family, and she is relying on Michael to stand up and be there for me. And she knows that, even though he's just, off on his own, whatever, that when it's necessary, he will be there. So it's a hard question. I do absolutely believe in a person's right to choose for themselves. It's not anybody else's decision. Same with abortion and anything else. It's like, you know what, that's up to you. But when you're confronted with it personally, and it's no longer just an esoteric thing, that's different. I can't imagine being in that position now I can, I can't imagine it, which is why it's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and your character's not given the time to think about it or adjust to it.
No.
So it makes it even more difficult.
Exactly. I knew that my mother was dying, and I knew that it was going to happen, but it's out there. It's in the future. I know at some point I will have to confront it, but I didn't realize that point was going to be right now. Right. So I honestly don't know how else that would happen. If you're going to make that choice, maybe that's kind of the way that I would do it too, really, come to think of it. Because what are you going to do? And announce it and then give? Yeah, that would be even harder, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you, Stephen. I really love that.
Oh, sure. Thank you for doing it twice. Well, actually, because rehearsal, you've done it several times.
I've done it several times. And I will do it as many times as you'd like.
Despite the fact that when you're emoting in that way, it kind of cracks you up for quite a time afterwards, doesn't it?
A little bit. I've been totally wiped out last night and today since doing all of that stuff like for 1963. And it's been a recuperating day today.
Yeah. And that was also a great performance, especially when you get to your part when you start talking about the daughter you lost. Yeah, I watched the whole thing.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that part yet. I saw that the link was up, but I started watching a little bit of it, but then I was talking to my son for a couple of hours. So, yeah. I'm glad you liked it.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting seeing it being rehearsed, seeing how Henry works with the actors. And I have to tell, with Henry, Hung actually mentioned your directing from the Blanket City piece that we did. And what he said was that your directing style is very positive, that you always had something positive to say. And if you wanted something to change, you would say, well, how about this? It was never a demand or it has to be this way. It was always a suggestion, but it was always either followed by or preceded by something very positive. And he really enjoyed working with So I wanted you to know that.
Well, good. Well, thank you for saying that. That's. I mean, I enjoyed working with the whole of this team so much, and it was a very positive experience. And I think we made a very wonderful film out of it. In fact, so thank you again for being part of this exploration online, and being part of this particular poetry piece, as it were. I think it was very effective, and you know, each time I see it, it gets me at so many levels. I mean, all the way through, not just at the end. I mean, it just, there's so much realness in it from all of it, and I think you put it across so well, and I think it's a marvelous piece. Thank you so much.